Good morning, everyone. This, according to my watch, it is now 10 o'clock. We will call the meeting of the Opioid Abatement Funding Advisory Task Board to order. If you would, everybody, please turn your cell phones off or to mute position and stand up. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And hopefully everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting, and at this time I'll entertain a motion or any additions or deletions or to the minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes so it's read.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, aye? This time, I see we have someone I'm not familiar with you, sir, and if you don't mind, I'd like to introduce the board up here. Let us introduce ourselves, starting from Tony, and then you can introduce yourself where I can know who you are, please. Thank you. Tony? You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Tommy White.
Matt Finger.
I'm John Mathis.
Kathy White.
Irv Williams. Irv Williams.
And I'm Will Nelson with the County Attorney's Office. I appreciate you allowing me to be here. Chrissy Hankins is out of town, but will return for your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here with us. Is Stephanie Shepard here?
She is on the way. I kind of gave her, when they pulled up the directions, it gave her the one on Fairfield, and she
Okay.
went there. So she is, she's on the way. So she should be here momentarily. So we can move to item number 5 and come back to number 4 if you like, sir.
Okay, that works for me. Item number 5, invitations to bid purchasing.
So Christy had asked me to put this on the agenda. I don't know if you are at a point where you need to put an invitation to bid out.
We are not. I thought you were just going to give the overview of the invitation to bid. I know we had one a little bit last meeting.
We
but I
can.
didn't know if there was something else that you were
Okay,
going to add
okay.
to it.
We
So
can
no,
do
I don't
right.
think we're at that point yet.
Okay, so I'm Lindsay Stevens. I'm the Deputy Purchasing Manager. Whenever you guys are getting your invitations to bid together, you'll be working with me. What I will need from you is a list of everything that you're looking to purchase. I can't use brand names, but we can do suitable substitutes. But just a list and a general scope and overview of what you're looking for. And then once I have all of that from you, we'll coordinate your insurance through risk management. And then we'll get it published out for between 14 and 30 days, whatever you guys decide. And it'll just be off of cost.
Any questions for her at this time?
No, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Like I said, I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we got to get some proposals before us before we can even start that process down the road. But I'm sure we'll be getting you to refresh our memories when that time comes too. So, all right, Kathy, I see you put on the agenda research findings. You want to
Yes,
kick that off?
I sure will. I've been doing a little bit of research on what other counties are doing through this process. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I've discovered as I was doing some of this. Volusia County, they partnered with the University of South Florida to assist them to come up with recommendations where there are gaps in services within their community. And I wanted to just say this about that. Escambia County has recently done a sequential intercept mapping project with USF. So we should be getting the final report on that soon, and I expect that to come out in the next month or so. But that would at least help us identify any gaps that we have within the community as we move forward with this process. Not that it's geared specifically for this opioid abatement, but I do feel like that will help us. So as I get additional information on that, then I can share that with the committee. I also wanted to mention one other county that I looked at in Florida was Lee County. They did a notice of funding availability for projects, and I think it's a strategy or a project to look at, for each of us to look at as we start this process. They did a really good job with their notice that they sent out. There's a lot of detailed information in there. I am going to reach out to Lee County to see what steps they took to get to that point, because they seem like they're a little bit ahead of us as far as where they are in the process. But again, if you have a chance, that's a good one to look at. So another, of course, I went outside the state of Florida too. Colorado, they have what they call an opioid epidemic blueprint. And what they basically did is they sent out a survey to the professionals in the area, and that helps them identify what areas they want to focus on as far as priorities with the funding. Then another one that I also looked at was Minnesota, Wright County, and I've actually made copies for everybody if you're interested. They sent out, or they're in the process of a survey. I believe it closes at the end of February, but I thought it was a good survey. This survey is sent out to the community for the community to basically provide their input on the areas they feel like are the most needed or the most critical. So they really broke it down into the 4 categories: criminal justice, harm reduction, prevention, and treatment recovery. So I brought each of you a copy of this to look at. It seems to be about the right length, not too long, but yet still provide some pretty good information. I've also been reaching out to the agencies that distribute Narcan and trying to find out, in Escambia County, is this something low-hanging fruit, something that we need to approach immediately? And so far, what I found out, let me get back to my notes. The health department distributes Narcan to anybody that comes in for a visit. I think they are allowed to give them 5 per person per visit, and that's at all 3 locations. Lakeview does distribute Narcan to all of their different programs like STOP, Pathway. I'm trying to remember what all, but they had several that they actually distribute the Narcan to. I also did reach out to EMS, and they said right now they aren't in critical need of Narcan. They kind of have that kind of mapped out for them. But anyway, I just thought, I'm still waiting to hear back from some of the other agencies, but those are the 3 that I've heard from so far, because I feel like, that's an immediate thing. We want to be sure that we can at least get Narcan in the hands of those that need it.
Thank you, Kathy. You said you're expecting more information from Lee County?
I'm going to call Lee County because, like I said, what I actually pulled up was already their notice of funding availability, and it's really detailed, really good information, but I want to know how they got to that point, because they had to have their strategy first identified, and I'm sure, of course, they had to have the Board of Accounting approve that strategy before they send out the notice of funding availability. So I'm going to reach out to them. I didn't have time to do that prior to this meeting, but I did see that, and I thought it was, like I said, really well-written and something for us to kind of use an example. We don't want to reinvent the wheel,
Exactly. That's what I was going to say too, is if somebody's doing it and doing it right,
Right.
we could tweak it where it fits our community, but I think that's an excellent idea, and appreciate the work you put into that. And if you get your information back from Lee County, you can disseminate it through the
Sure. I'll definitely.
liaison back to all of us. Appreciate it. So.
Yes. And I want to say, like I said, Minnesota, this survey, they seem like they are just kind of about where we are. They just are submitting this survey out to everybody. and giving the time frame. Like I said, I think they're having it returned back by February. They're closing the survey at February. So at least that gives us some things to think about, but I know we need to get moving.
I'm looking at the survey too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Kathy, I was just wondering, did you find out how they disseminated this survey, or?
I did read it. I know they put it on their website. I know they distribute it to like health departments, I can't list everyone off the top of my head, but yes, they did have a good list of all the agencies to send it to. They provided paper copies as well as being able to access it online. But I can get that. I mean, they were really good to reach right back out to me immediately for this, so I feel like I have a good contact there.
Anybody else have questions or comments? Kathy?
Yeah, okay. I appreciate this. I think this is a good starting point for us to take a look at kind of where we are and what kind of tools we need to use to really kind of decide what the priorities are and how to get input from the various segments of the community. So I really appreciate the research that you've done.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Kathy, for the time and effort you put into that, and some good information here and some more coming to us, I'm sure. Okay, anybody else having more comments, or let's open it up while we're waiting for this, Ms. Shepherd? Oh, Ms. Shepherd, hi.
I'd like to give a little prelude
Go ahead,
before she,
please.
so you can understand how she come about to be here today. Councilwoman Jennifer Breyer called me in December after speaking with Ms. Shepherd. I'm gonna let her tell her story because it's pretty rough. It's pretty tough, and I thought it was something very important, her experience and what she went through, that she came before us today as we set our priorities, because some experiences that she has dealt with through the years, and unless you deal with it, you don't know that certain things are not available in our county to the extent that where they need to be. So as we deal with the funding for this opioid situation, her story and what she went through, I think, warrants that she be heard, and that her experiences don't become the experiences of other parents in the future. So with that being said, Ms. Shepherd, it's great to have you today. Thank you for coming forth, and thank you for telling your story.
I think this is where I'm supposed to be, right? My name is Stephanie Shepherd, and I was just asked to come in and share my story, so I wrote it. I'm just going to read from that. In 2018, Isaiah's 8th grade year, everything about him began to change. It was his first year becoming a behavioral problem or struggling academically in school. During this year, he either got caught or admitted to taking Adderall, Xanax, Tramadol, drinking, vaping, and smoking pot. Him and his buddies were also picked up by the police after sneaking out to tag and do graffiti. In 2019, in 9th grade, Isaiah was reported for having pot at school. He was searched and luckily only suspended for having a vape. Later that year, he was officially arrested for tagging on a church property, which led to his first round of probation. He quit all of the things that he loved at school, DECA, band, etc. He was caught taking edibles. He had counseling sessions with a well-known addiction counselor for 3 months. 2020, another parent told me that Isaiah was dealing drugs. He was getting pills and THC vapes from another student to distribute. He also tried acid for the first time and had a horrible trip, which almost landed him in the hospital. This was the first scariest moment of this long spiral. At some point in this year, he lost all respect for adults, and his level of disrespect became unbearable. I started him with a new counselor. He finished his 10th grade year at home due to COVID. I grounded him several times and removed his phone, and somehow he magically landed with new phones even when he didn't leave the house. Isaiah expressed being depressed, so I scheduled a psychiatric appointment with Lakeview, our only option with his insurance. It turned out to be a 10-minute medication appointment. The psychiatrist wanted to offer him Adderall and a sleeping medication, both of which were classified as highly addictive. I refused, and instead he started Vyvanse and Zoloft at the start of 11th grade. For the first 4 months of school, I battled every single night getting Isaiah to come home from his new girlfriend's house. It was a party house. Since Isaiah's death, his friends have informed me that this is when he began taking Oxycontin, Percocets, and where he tried cocaine for the first time. I called the police several times to have him removed from her home and to investigate on the drug scene. They would assist with getting Isaiah into the car, but nothing further. In December, I was exhausted and my daughters had been traumatized, so I let him go. I allowed him to stay with his girlfriend, where he resided for 6 months. In 2021, Isaiah's behavior at school was so bad that he was almost expelled, but instead he was placed in an alternative program. To avoid this program, we registered Isaiah with virtual school for his senior year. Isaiah turned 17 in June and was arrested for possession. The judge court-ordered him to come home. He was placed on probation. I told the judge and probation officer that I was not equipped to handle him, that his drug use and lack of respect was not safe for his sisters, and I needed help. I was told that if I refused for him to live with me, CPS would need to be involved. He was put on probation and referred to a task intake with Lakeview, which only led to a new counselor and a new psychiatrist, of which prescribed the same medication as before. His anger episodes in the house increased. He failed his first 3 drug tests and was transferred to a new PO. His new PO stopped drug tests. When I questioned why this was, I was told that the judge didn't check the box requiring random UAs. I was hopeful that with being on probation, Isaiah would land in juvie at some point and that this would help straighten him out. Instead, I was told to call the police if I found drugs or if he became too belligerent or violent for me to handle. In spite of the judge's orders, Isaiah lived with one of his grandparents for a few months to see if that would help. It didn't. I finally stopped denying the fact that my son was an addict. I reached out to 10 people that live in 5 different states, Tennessee, California, Arizona, New Jersey, and Maryland, all of which work in the substance abuse field or have suffered from addiction and have had years in recovery. With their recommendations, I spoke with 6 different facilities or people who could guide me to a facility from California, Washington, Tennessee, Alabama, and South Florida. None of the places had recommendations for adolescents, but said they could help me once Isaiah turned 18. Of course, the cost was going to be high without private insurance, so I began preparing myself financially. In 2022, Isaiah lost all of his friends. At times, his actions appeared as if he was mentally unstable. In March, he went to an AA meeting with his uncle and said that he could relate a little, but didn't feel like it was right for him. I managed to help Isaiah graduate high school through virtual school. He got off probation a few days before turning 18. I fully intended on gifting him a trip to rehab for his 18th birthday, but it was recommended I wait until he wanted it. In July, Isaiah was catering on NAS for a job. He was at the entrance trying to get a pass, and they smelt marijuana in his car and asked to search it. Due to it being on a military base, he landed with a felony drug charge. In August, he OD'd at home and I had to call the police for help. They took him to Baptist, and he was released about 8 hours later. He was picked up on the curb in a hospital gown. That's how they released him into the world. No resources, no guidance, no help. I was hopeful that after he turned 18, things would be different. The only thing that changed was that I was no longer called. I was no longer notified. My son was left to figure out life on the streets alone. After Isaiah's overdose, my daughters asked for him to not come home. They were terrified for all of our safety. I asked my mother to take him in. I got him enrolled with George Stone's electrical program. I thought maybe if I could help him see a light at the end of the tunnel and keep him active, he would snap out of the hell he was living in and come back to reality. Although Isaiah was attending school, my mom had to kick him out in September because he brought drugs into her home. He slept in his car for 3 nights before getting picked up by the police. They searched his car and he landed with an additional drug charge. This was the first time that he was actually booked and placed in jail. I allowed him to stay in jail for 7 days while I began calling those treatment facilities again. I made arrangements with the judge, an attorney, the bail bondman, and a treatment facility in Tennessee to have him released from jail and put on a plane. As I watched him go through security at the airport, I felt hopeful and relieved and was finally able to catch my breath. Isaiah only made it 4 days in rehab before they called to tell me he had to leave and receive a mental evaluation before returning. He was transported to the Vanderbilt Psych Ward, of which he did not qualify for due to his lack of honesty. Those were their words. The police picked him up on a park bench in Nashville and transported him to a Salvation Army for the night. He then had to stay on the streets of Nashville for a night until I was able to get him a flight home. I proceeded with attempting to Baker Act Isaiah, only to find that this was no longer an option with Baptist. I allowed him to stay with me for 5 days until I was able to get him the first bed available at Roads to Recovery, the only inpatient treatment facility in Escambia County. He stayed there for 2 nights before they asked him to leave due to another psychotic episode. Before discharge, they made a referral for a psychosis evaluation. I took him the following day. He was officially diagnosed with drug-induced psychosis. My daughters again expressed their concerns and fears regarding Isaiah living with us, and so my mother took him in. He started an outpatient program at Lakeview that offered weekly counseling and medication, another round of the same exact treatment. 1 year later, Isaiah OD'd and died. I'd like to share with you a little bit of my speech from Isaiah's memorial service. Escambia County needs somewhere for the youth to go when struggling, somewhere for parents to reach out when all hope seems lost. I cried for help for years. I wasn't quiet. Throughout the entire process that I just shared with you, I sat across from teachers and administrators, resource officers, guidance counselors, private counselors, probation officers, lawyers, judges, and countless law enforcement begging for guidance. But there was nowhere for them to guide me. All programs that may have once existed are gone. I may not have been quiet, but I was only one voice. Since my son's overdose, I have been contacted by multiple parents in this community. I have been committed to finding a way to help improve our broken system. I've gathered the resources that are available to share with them. These include MAT. This stands for Medicated Assisted Treatment. They provide methadone and Suboxone for people 16 and above. There's CATS, Community Action Team, which provides counseling, medication, and a form of life coaching for adolescents and young adults. HEART, which helps homeless get Narcan and transportation to local shelters, must be 18. CORE responds to referrals from police, doctors, and the ER. They provide evaluations and assist with getting into treatment, must be 18. The only 2 treatments available in Escambia and Santa Rosa County include the Friary, which is an outpatient detox, and Roads to Recovery, which is an inpatient for 18 and above. Isaiah's grandmother has worked for Lakeview for over 6 years. She has a degree in mental and health counseling. She currently works for Lakeview's CAT team. Even with her inside resources, she was still not capable of finding assistance for Isaiah prior to turning 18. There is literally nowhere for teens to go when struggling with drugs. I believe that if there were more resources available to teens and their families in Escambia County, we would ultimately have a decrease in opioid-related drug charges, arrests, and most definitely a decrease in opioid overdoses. City Council member Jennifer Breyer, as well as State Representative Michelle Salzbach, can confirm that the need for change is necessary. My mission is to start an inpatient rehab for adolescents between the ages of 13 to 17. The name of my nonprofit organization is Hope Above Fear. I'd love to answer any questions and work alongside with you to bring change for the youth and families in Escambia County.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. I think that exemplifies the problem that we have here in Escambia County, and I think it really brings it home to all of us sitting up here that we know people that have had the issues, but hearing it come from you and, you know, the pain that you have been through and all the work you put into trying to correct the situation and trying to get help for your son. I thank you for sharing that story with us, and anybody have any questions of her?
Well, I'd like to say thanks, Stephanie, for coming. I know it's hard. I know we talked on the phone a couple of times, but through her story, what was most amazing and just heartbreaking about this situation is that and I didn't know this up until this point, if you're under 8, like, we have no treatment. I mean, I just don't understand. Inpatient treatment for people under 18. That is astounding. Because when it starts at 13, 14 years old, and you just tell the parents to deal with it, I'm not really sad. I'm just kind of like angry. And, I'm just makes me angry. And I know we deal with a lot in Lakeview. I know there's people on Lakeview, and we have, when it was going on, we've got to do something. So as we set our priorities, I really want us to make youth, treatment one of those priorities, because it states in the goals is to prevention, awareness, and also we have in here mothers, children's, babies. So it's in that wheelhouse. I know we're only dealing with so much resources, but we have to do something. I can just imagine how many other parents is like dealing with this, and like how long do they go before it ultimately ends up into a suicide? Even the EMS chief says, before the core program in which they're trying to implement, only thing they could do is what we're doing. And thank God for the chief of the EMS now, because through a personal experience, he sees that it needs to go from the time of pickup all the way through. And I would like for you to speak with him too, because I think these youths, I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know what we're going to do or how it needs to be structured. But that's just unbelievable. For her to have to call to Tennessee, Montana, all those other places, and she's right here.
I actually, with further research, I have found that the closest youth rehab is in New Orleans, as far as like the miles go.
Do you know the name of that?
I haven't.
Well, I want to do one thing like Miss White. I'm going to take this as a personal thing and try to really assist with this situation. And if you can get the name of it, because I like to contact them and see like how their structure is, so we can get help. But anyway, thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it. And
Stephanie?
oh no, Miss Stephanie.
Thank you so much for sharing. I would like your contact information.
Okay.
If you want to, I don't know if you can maybe give it to the attorney or however, but I would like your contact information because we would definitely like more information.
Okay.
Stephanie and I happen to know one another, so I'll make certain you'll have what you need.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. And if at some other point I can come back, and I know that we have a committee, and we meet this Wednesday, and I know that Jennifer Breyer's been assisting me along the way with this, and so we are proceeding with starting, like I said, a rehab for youth, and I'm working with Impact 100, and we'll be applying for a grant with them, and then we're researching a grant that perhaps the police department used to have. I'm not certain if they still do, but somebody's on the committee is working on that, and so we are working towards doing that away from Lakeview, like just a nonprofit that's not affiliated. Whenever I met with a group of teens, well, young adults now, and there was about 8 kids that were there between the ages of 16 and 19. And I took a lot of the recommendations that they had, and just in regards to like when you were struggling, or the people that you know that are struggling, like what do you think would help them? And I'm basing where my direction with the guidance or the suggestions that this age range gave, what they think would be helpful within a treatment program. And so just throwing that out there.
If I could
One
co-
question I have, do you have any statistics on the problem with teens in Escambia County, doing your research and stuff?
I know that it's pretty high, but I do know that one of the things that, to answer, I do not have that currently with me. But I do know that one of the comments that a few of the teens made in that meeting were that they are nervous to go to, like, let's say a guidance counselor at school to express like that they're having a problem or that a friend is having a problem, because that they're so quick to just like admit them into, you know, the psych ward at Baptist, you know. And so like that's been like, that's what they think of when they think of Lakeview, is just the psych ward, and that it's, you know, it's a negative place in the youth mind. And so you know, I think there's a lot of kids that struggle without there being knowledge of the struggle. But I can work on getting those statistics for sure, just see what is available.
If I can also comment, again, I appreciate your sharing your story, but also your activism in terms of following up with this. In terms of what you're looking at as far as your nonprofit, are you focusing on developing an inpatient or outpatient?
Yes, inpatient is what, I do thoroughly believe that if my son would have gotten inpatient early on, that it could have helped direct him down a different path. And so that's what I searched for, which I don't think I put in this, but I know that in 10th grade, whenever we had come home for COVID, it would have been that summer that I would have started making my first phone calls. Whenever I saw that, like, whenever we were all home and it was very clear to me, you know, that there was a problem. And so, but there was programs that were available outside of the state, were put on hold because of COVID. And so there were programs like elsewhere, but they had very limited beds, and their prices had increased as well due to COVID. And so it was not feasible for me. And so I just kept working with counselors, and which are great. That they're, you know, it's just that's not. There are times when somebody needs to be removed from their environment, and I believe that, and I know that as far as statistics go, that, you know, studies have shown that it takes 66 days to change a habit, to form a new habit. And so I'm shooting for, at first I was like, oh, a 30-day program, and then the more that I've read and the more that I've researched and the more that I spoke with other people who have gone to treatment and have had success stories, is that, you know, a 90-day program is really what I need to shoot for. And so that's where I'm going with that. Yes.
Ms. Shepherd, would you agree, I mean, from my experience, and it's kind of hard to differentiate between sometimes whether it's drug abuse problems / mental health issues. And I think one big hand is going to come in there to play is how do we incorporate them together, you know,
Yeah.
through our counseling? Because, I mean, there can be two separate issues, or they can be one and the same.
I do believe that
So-
it's oftentimes, they go hand in hand.
Right.
You know, whether it's, you know, solely depression or, you know, anxiety or, you know, but either way, those are both very valid mental health issues.
Right.
And
Okay.
so
Okay.
they go hand in
Right.
hand.
Well, again, thank you for sharing your story, your tragic story, and, you know, we, you know, appreciate you taking the time and appreciate you, you know, all your personal effort that you're putting into this, really do.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Anything from staff?
Unless you have any questions for us, I don't think so.
Okay. I would like to just throw it out here to the board for just some discussion about where do we want to go with this? I know Kathy's researching some stuff, getting some information for us, which I think is good, and we need to do that. But we have to take the first step at some point. And I would like for us to think about that and going over our strategies, you know, maybe for the next meeting, and come back with, you know, where would you like to see us going to with this? And maybe a question for staff is, how do we go about getting, if I got somebody that I would like to come before us, do I need to go through you guys to do that, to get approval for that? I mean, does it need to be discussed openly here in front of the entire board?
As the board is well aware, obviously Sunshine Law applies, and I think you all have been aware and careful. I think Chrissy Hankins is certainly an expert in that area. It does strike me that I don't think that anything would limit members of the public from communicating with any of you individually. That's absolutely appropriate. And if you want to suggest a speaker, I think that it would be fine to coordinate with staff in order to add somebody. I mean, clearly, we would look at the rules that always apply, which means that we wouldn't be discussing any kind of advisory opinions or anything amongst yourselves, but of course, that wouldn't be a concern. So I don't think that that would be an issue at all with regard to bringing that forward and adding it to the agenda.
Thank you. Tommy?
Yes, I have a quick question for the ones that are, you know, that's associated with, you know, Lakeview and ones asked prior. So, in years past, how does that work? I know, Chief, you're law enforcement, Ms. Engler, you're law enforcement. So, what has been the process for the youth in years past? Like, if they had a drug problem, like, did Lakeview, did they ever deal with youth intake? Or, like, did they deal with it and then they cut it off? Or how did that work?
Yeah, I can speak to that. At one point, Lakeview had, for many years, Lakeview actually had a residential program for adolescents. It was referred to as DART, Drug and Alcohol Adolescent Residential Program. And probably 3 to 4 years ago, the program was discontinued. It was state funded, and this has kind of happened in the field in many ways, that the focus was kind of shifted to outpatient services. And I think it was a short-sighted view of that population needing that service. So at one point, it was a 16 to 20 bed unit. Length of stay was probably 60 to 90 days, and so that program did exist. Also, the task program that she mentioned. I mean, so I think there are different pieces that, again, I think our community experience is that many of those pieces don't fit as well together as they should, in terms of warm handoffs, in terms of continuing what the different pieces can offer. But the short answer to your question, at one point, yes, Lakeview had a residential program for adolescents, and I think it was really a miscalculation on the part of where the resources went to close that program.
So in the spirit of what Chief just said, asking where we want to go with this. So can we, I mean, I think it's kind of safe to say when we was talking about gaps, as Ms. Cathy was talking, this is definitely a big gap in our community when it comes to opioid abatement, treatment, and awareness. So, yeah, so I know treatment as far as adult-wise, the youth-wise, and then also the awareness. I think definitely up there when we start to build out our framework of definitely what do we want to put a bid out for. 18 and above, we know we have that going, so to strengthen that particular realm, the treatment and whatnot. And Jennifer Breyer, she also brought up another great situation that I think was pretty ingenious. I don't know if it's ingenious or not. Test strips, fentanyl test strips, the availability of fentanyl test strips. She spoke of, and I hope she don't mind me telling the story of, she had an experience with knowing someone that had smoked some pot. Got a call that the relative wasn't breathing. Come to find out, the pot was laced with fentanyl. I didn't even know they had fentanyl test strips, but I don't know the cost of it or whatnot, or if that's a large cost. But if if people could, I mean, because addiction is addiction. It's something. It's not an easy thing to kick. But if you could possibly test something that you're taking, and that could save possibly some overdoses. My sister-in-law, I think she thought she was taking some pain meds, some regular pain meds or whatnot, and found her face down on the bed at 2 in the morning. We got that call. She had so I don't think that she would probably be intentionally doing it, but just I thought that was kind of something. So maybe when we're looking at the purchasing of the what's the drug, the Narcan and the other things, that maybe we can look at what the cost of the test strips, maybe have some distribution facilities where people can get test strips, make that available to the public as we go through our process. So that's all I got to say, man. My, kind of pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that because just recently there's been some inquiry about the use of test strips, and in Florida they're illegal. They're considered paraphernalia. Yes, and so there's been a move, and I think there's some legislature, maybe Representative Salzman is asking some questions of people in the field about how do we feel about that. But as part of a harm reduction prevention kind of thing, many states have allowed test strips to be sold, and people are using it. And again, it's not just for those who are, quote, hardcore substance users. The example that you gave, someone smoking pot that's been laced with fentanyl that they don't know that that's what's going on. The test strip could prevent an overdose in that regard. But so currently in Florida, test strips are not legal. And so I think there's a move to look at that and to reconsider that. And again, I think the more that the community is aware of the full gamut of what's involved with this, there may be more support for that. So I think that's another example of how the substance use in our world is changing how we view things and what the different avenues there are to address it. Yeah.
Again, this is great. Never knew. So every time we come to a meeting, we're learning more and more because of different people's experiences and the knowledge of the individuals on this board. So, and as we go through this process, so that is pretty interesting. That is, man, you got an epidemic of fentanyl, and wow, that's amazing.
I just wanted to say a couple of things on that. I, too, knew that it was illegal to use that here, or we haven't been approved for that. But, you've got to think of the funding that's been distributed throughout the state. Just like you had mentioned, priorities have changed. There have been some programs that were for youth, all of those things. But as funding changes, so has that really trajectory changed. So I think it's real important. There are so many little pieces to this when we're considering, what recommendations to make to the Board of County Commissioners for this. I think we definitely need to hear from the public. We need to hear from parents. I think the survey may be a really good first step for us while we're considering what we're going to talk about at the next meeting. I feel like that may be a very good first step. Just throwing that out there, like I said, we definitely want to hear from everyone that's had the experience so that we can make the best decisions moving forward.
Question to the county administrator. Is there a place where people that have these experiences, where we can ask them like publicly, that they can go and possibly maybe put that on, send it to us online or something, like a website, like an opioid abatement website, or is there any, I know we probably don't have one, but where could, like, we could, if I went on my Facebook page and say, hey, look, we are seeking information about your experiences, things that, is there a place I could send them to kind of get, their voices?
If you want to do it electronically, we could establish a page specifically for the board. We could do that. You can always hold a public meeting. You can call a public meeting where people want to come and share their experiences. We did something similar at Brownsville Community Center some months ago, and some parents were there, and people that have been affected by the opioid and drug addiction. You can do that. You can have it at Brownsville, seems to be a good place, or you can have it other areas as well. You can have more than one if you want to. And just invite people to come and give their story, share their story, give their input, give their thoughts. You can certainly do something like that.
Would you guys be willing to do something of that nature before we kind of like complete the framework, before we kind of like solidify our ideas of what we're trying to go with this? I know some of it is just going to be, it's going to go towards the things that are already in process, but hear people experiences where they maybe feel that they couldn't get help, and where we felt as a community felt short in the gap.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, and I think if we do get a page like that, I don't know who we would get to make our survey, but that would be, I think, a good avenue for people to be able to fill it out on that page, one way to get it out to the community.
And another thing, these meetings too, people can come and speak at these meetings, so we do have an avenue that's currently in place once they get to know, what we're working on here. But a large part of it is education for the community. I mean, we've got to look at, the community's not aware of just how big this problem is, or they've closed their eyes to it.
So possibly maybe over like the next, 90 days is a good kind of like information gathering time period, so we can kind of like move into like the spring or the summer with some type of framework before this, by like April or something, so we can kind of start getting those bids submitted out, so we can get a solicitation for what we're looking for before this next fiscal year runs through, because it moves pretty fast.
Yeah, we definitely need to get moving. In fact, I don't know if this is something that we might need to schedule more than one meeting a month, but I definitely think we need to really get moving on this and push ourselves to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Who would we get here with the staff, I guess, to put together our survey if we wanted to follow something like what you found, Kathy?
I don't know if I would need to work, I guess I would need to work specifically with a,
If y'all
Attorney.
finalize the survey that y'all want to send out to the community, we can host it on our website. We can put a link, put it on the banner. We put public notices out through our CMR, our news outlets. We can let everybody know that the survey is there and where to find it, and we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, go ahead, Ms.
I'm going to be having an interview with N Weekly within the next month, and so I could advertise that during that interview as well,
Okay.
that's available and where it's located, and would be happy to assist in any way.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay, great.
I guess this might be a question for Mr. Hanson, but do we have to have a meeting, or could we have something like a workshop or something like that? Or does it have to be a scheduled meeting where we could get together and discuss ideas, like Kathy got this survey, I mean, stuff like that, or do we have to do it here in a meeting?
As you're an advisory board and are governed by sunshine law, I think that always in the abundance of caution, it's better to do that in the sunshine. Perhaps a workshop that would be noticed and advertised so that folks could come would end up being advantageous. I think it would also have the additional advantage that if you wanted to have public input, and my reading from what you've said today is that you certainly want to seek and have different perspectives, you may be able to meet both those kind of goals through that structure. But I would err on the side of having this matter be public, again, because you're advisory in nature.
So we could have a workshop, public workshop, kind of put the framework of a survey out, get information, things of that nature, and then come back to our next meeting, officially approve the survey, and then have it officially launched out.
I think that would be the cautious but appropriate way to proceed to do that.
Okay, this time, you want to look at your calendars and let's decide. Kathy, I know you mentioned earlier than later. I will not be in town next month, so, but I mean, that's it. You would be the chair, so, you know, I'm certainly participating any way I could. I'm leaving town this week and I'll be out, I'll be gone for like 6-8 weeks, so.
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess a question would be also, how long does it have to be advertised if we're having if we want to do a workshop for the 2 weeks? So today's the 9th, so if we did it on the 30th of January, that would give us enough time?
I think the 30th would be perfect.
That's okay with me.
So we would do it in chambers here, like a workshop in chambers here, or at Browns, in chamber? Here? Okay.
And then I guess y'all could check the schedule availability of the room. Okay.
Okay, have a question. Time frame, because we're talking about a workshop, you have people at work. So do we want to do it on a Monday, or do we want to do it on a weekend, like a Saturday somewhere? We do it here, we need to do it in the evening so people can actually attend, because people do during work. So like a 6 o'clock time frame, get people maybe the time to transition, get here, do a little evening workshop, and we're going to do it on that Monday to give people time to attend. Because Ms. Shepherd, she's so gracious, she took off this morning to be here, and we really appreciate you doing that.
As you are aware, the county commission tries to accommodate that exact type of process. So there's going to be an evening meeting and a morning meeting often as it cycles through, and I think that that's certainly is a legitimate consideration.
Evening works for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so tentatively set January the 30th, 6 o'clock? Sure. Of course, that's pending availability of the chambers, so. Anything else come before the board this morning?
Do we want to set a meeting for February?
That's fine with me.
What day in February, Kathy, would you be thinking?
Either the 13th or the 20th, would either of those dates work?
Just caution, 20th is the Monday before Fat Tuesday. Just
Also President's Day, is that a county holiday?
Oh, okay.
13th would work for me.
good with 13th.
I could do the 13th, but I wouldn't be able to do it at 10. I could probably do it 11 or 8 in the morning. I just have something I have to be at 10.
11? 11 work? Okay.
11 o'clock? I have a question of you, sir. Is there any way, with me being out of town, I could Zoom in? Is there any way, mechanism for that, to where I could be in attendance and hear everything and? Yes, we do that. Okay. Who would I need to get up with to? Okay. Tina? Okay, all right. Anything else come before the board? This time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you all
Aye.
very much again, everybody, for coming and the work you put into it. And Ms. Shepherd, I certainly appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us again. I know it's not easy. But, thank you, and I think it's just signifies that we need to be doing something to get the ones that fall between the cracks, you know, so, thank you.